What's new in 22.1? I just want to highlight, create simplicity, beauty, and happiness in the world, one app at a time is our goal at Infragistics with everything that we build. So what you're going to see today is just one aspect of all of our products. There's Reveal, which is our data analytics self-service BI tool. There's Slingshot, which is our digital workplace for collaboration, data analytics, and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that we do, and we really try to deliver beautiful experiences, not only for the developer experience, but for the end user experience as well. And everyone here that you see is on the call today, and they're responsible for this. So Constantine is on, he's our director of product development. Brian's our senior product owner, basically does product owners across multiple different products. And George is senior product owner, senior UX architect, and he's going to show a lot of the app builder stuff today. And the good thing about George is when we hired him, he was at the very beginning of our UX story, like 12 or 13 years ago. It was a long time ago. He's been here all along the way. So he has all that knowledge of what you have all been giving feedback on in our products to help us improve over time in everything that we deliver. So this is just a quick summary slide. I've got a few more detailed slides, then we're going to go right into demo, spend most of the time on demo today. So .NET 6, Visual Studio 2022 support, of course, that's all baked in. .NET 7 is coming this year in November for Microsoft. We are going to have everything ready for .NET 7 as well. We're starting to look at some of the early builds. We're excited about what's happening with Blazor, AOT, just updates. You've got Maui and other things that are part of that with Maui tooling, if you watched any of Build in the last month. So there's a lot more coming from us in terms of .NET 7 and Visual Studio this year. App Builder, we've got a bunch of new updates. You're going to see demos of today. New controls across all of the product lines for web. We've done a lot of work in data visualization. So we have like I said, a product called Reveal, which is an embedded self-service BI SDK. And then we have a product called Slingshot, which is a digital workplace. Those products use our charting products. And our charting products were really developer focused for forever. And we did things like really focused on high performance, high volume scenarios. So you could like 3 million data points could tick in milliseconds. But now we have these end user products. And so we've done a ton of work on just making the charts look better, behave better, make them more turnkey. So you don't have to worry about setting defaults. And a lot of that is starting to come through in the defaults of the chart now. And you'll see it. Angular 14, new pivot grid, new design systems across the board for XD and Sketch with new themes. And you'll see about that. UI kit updates, lots of new examples. So a lot of stuff happening. So there's 3 areas we focused on. The first one is around App Builder and RAD design and development. We're going to continue to do this. App Builder is basically where we spend most of our time now, because App Builder is fed by UI components and controls, and it saves you time and money because you can WYSIWYG your way to a great experience and you can get code. So doesn't mean we're not building controls. We need more controls, better controls, bigger controls. But they all need to be easier to use, and you need to build apps faster. And that's where kind of number one is focused on, is really giving that RAD design and development experience for modern web. And then number 2, best of breed UI controls. We continue to deliver amazing experiences in these components. And that shows in this release with the Blazor Doc Manager, with the Angular Pivot Grid, with all these new controls across the board. That we're shipping, new features and grids, et cetera. And then number 3, I mentioned a lot of the work we're doing around data visualization and charting, and that's going to continue to be an emphasis of ours in these future releases. And then the charting itself will be easier to use inside of App Builder. And of course, that's a big release for us here. A big announcement is that we have charting support now in App Builder. We did not have this previously, which is really slick. So you can add any of the business charts. It's like 10 or 12 charts, pie charts, and then we're just going to continue to add more charts along to that, but super easy to use. Localhost on-prem data binding. This was a huge feature request from customers who are, keep in mind, App Builder is a SaaS app. It's running in the cloud, but you want to access data on your local network. Well, that is supported now with App Builder. So it's pretty exciting. New app templates and screen layouts. I've shown these on some YouTube lives and other videos, but you'll see those again today. Our Blazor code generation is released. We have new and updated toolbox with new controls. We have UI kits for Bootstrap, Fluent, and Indigo now across the board. in Sketch and XD. We're working on them for Figma. So if you're designing in any of those tools and you're just pulling that design right into App Builder, you get the full theme support. And then finally, we added an on-prem version of App Builder. This means if your company does not allow you to use SaaS tools like products on the web, you can have App Builder on your local network in your own secure environment. The licensing is different. It's more expensive than the per user license, but you basically get the whole cloud on your network. So that's a new and interesting feature. Across the board for Ignite UI, I mentioned Angular 14 support. We've got new pivot grid, right to left support. You're going to see a bunch of demos today on all this stuff, so I'm not going to go into too many details. Blazor has 13 new controls, new themes, doc manager, React and web components, 12 new controls. And if you remember the last release for 21.2, and I messed up, I'm sorry, I didn't have to update my upper right, new in 21.2 there. We added 12 or 13 new controls in the last release. So the goal is that everything is as good as the number of controls that we've had in Angular. So we're taking these Angular controls and we're getting them into React, into Blazor, into web components. So you'll see just more and more controls come over. We're almost there right now. And then updated themes in the charts that I mentioned. I'll show a couple of examples of this in the demos. So with that, I don't want to spend time on slides because it's all visual and we can just show it. I am going to let George share his screen and give us a demo of App Builder. So I'll stop my share, George. Yep, looks like you're taking over, and we can see your screen loud and clear.
All right, excellent. So folks who are new to App Builder, you should realize that App Builder is a solution which allows you to create, your designs using real components directly in the cloud. And then we can generate pixel perfect code and code which is production ready, which is what sets us apart from all the other low-code tools out there, is that whatever you end up creating in App Builder, it gets generated in a platform compliant way, in a best practices way, such that you can also extend that after you generate the application freely. So I'm going to talk about things related to the whole Indigo design platform. Then I'm going to talk about the specific things we have added inside of App Builder itself. So App Builder, as some of you might already know, if I can get rid of this toolbar here. So if I go to Indigo.design, we have the starting point for designers, and we have a starting point for developers who want to start directly inside of App Builder. For designers, they end up working in design tools like Sketch, Adobe, and Figma. And we're working on a Figma UI kit very soon. And in the meantime, we have this whole UI kit story for Sketch and XD. And typically what we had done in the past was that we had this one UI kit, which was geared towards material. But with this release, what we have done is we have actually created 4 flavors of this UI kit. And if anybody who's interested in trying them out directly, once you log into, go to cloud.indigo.design and go to the Getting Started section, we have this little button called Get Indigo Design System. And when you download the Indigo Design UI kit as a designer, you get the 4 types of UI kits instead of just getting one. And what that actually does is when I open up this UI kit in a tool like Sketch, you would see that we have this lovely Getting Started page, which actually shows what's inside our UI kit and how that story actually translates into components. And we actually list out all the components, and they're all links to the actual component designers can actually review. But here comes the 4 flavors of the UI kits we are now providing. We have one called Indigo.design, which is a nice, soft, rounded kind of a style. Then we have Material, we have Bootstrap, and Fluent. And what that actually does for your designs is in the Getting Started file, you would see some reference designs available. And these are not screenshots, they're actual components. And based on whatever UI kit you are actually using, you would see any theming capabilities we have added to our plugin. So when you come into this plugin we have for Sketch, you can actually apply a theme which will skin the entire UI kit, every single component. And then when you look at these reference designs, you would see those things automatically updated in real time. So here is what you would see, a design created using the Indigo UI kit. You see all are rounded. They have a specific typography and colors. And if I switch to a different UI kit, which is creating on material, you see it looks almost similar, but at the same time, they are different right down to how the input fields look, how the buttons look. And we feel like this would allow you a faster way to have a starting point you prefer and be able to create your designs on top of it. Naturally, the story is that once you have created these designs inside the UI kit, you can always go back to the plugin and go to the Indigo.design plugin and say, create an app. And this is where the handshake can happen between what designers have created inside of this design tool. And we are able to generate this as an app, which you can see in App Builder, where you can then continue editing that application using all the other capabilities we have in App Builder itself. So that will help us transition into what App Builder has to offer for this release. So I'm switching back to my cloud here. And I have App Builder open, running inside the App Builder. If you are not familiar, App Builder has these personal areas where you can actually create designs and apps for just which you have access to. And then we also have these group workspaces, which allow you to invite other members who also have access to the very same app. And this also becomes our collaboration story, such that you can actually just have this app in this group workspace, and then other members who have been invited here. And this is like my group workspace here. You can see this has like 26 plus members, and I can invite new members into this workspace, and they'll have access to everything inside this workspace. Things inside this workspace are non-destructive. So if somebody ends up deleting an app, you can always restore it from the deleted app kind of a section. But the thing we added on top of this, which we already had last year, is the ability to kind of move things between workspaces. So you could be working on something on a personal project, like on my projects area, and now you're ready to share it with the team. So we implemented this very quick way to say copy to a workspace. I can just copy, and I can pick some other workspace I wanted to go to. So let's just pick, I have a workspace called demo. And I can just take the app, and what it'll do is that the app usually comprises of themes. You could have had local data sources added to it. You could have added more assets like images and stuff. Everything is taken, and when you go back into this demo area, that's the app I just pushed in. If I click edit, everything which that app had is now migrated into here. So you have a completely disconnected copy, which you can now freely edit and make changes to. This is what I meant by the asset story. These were the assets which were available inside that file. It actually comes over. And of course, you can add more assets to make it available for everybody in this team space. Now, this app builder is very web friendly. So what you see, it looks like a design surface, but in reality, it's like full on a web surface. So what that means is that when I actually create a new view, everything in here is flex friendly, right? So it's opinionated in that way, and which is why when you look inside the component area, you would see some specialized components which are not really a platform component like a button or a button group. These are things which we actually support as a component. And then there are HTML components like layout, like flex row and flex column. Now, in order for you to create layouts, not everybody is familiar with how things are resized. So let me just change the skin here, make it a nice light theme. And so for that, we actually introduced this pick layout option. And this pick layout button will automatically show up when you have nothing on the canvas. So in that case, let's add a button here. Now at this point, the pick layout is gone. But if I want to get it back, I just have to clear everything here. And now this one will automatically pop up for you if you're the first time user. But if you have used it already once, then we would hide it, and it hides behind the button. But this allows you to kind of quickly use the layouts we have created for each individual view. So it doesn't matter how many views I create, you'll always have these options. And you can actually just play with how you want it. And these are like templates we have extracted from apps we have witnessed in the wild. Like, what are some of the common patterns? So for example, this is a pattern of a layout where I have a side pane, which is like a fixed, and then I have flexible areas in here. And you don't really need to know much about Flex in order to start using it directly, right? So if I hit done, now I have 3 layout containers. And in this layout containers, I can always use my quick add feature, which is like using a Control-E or a Command-E on a Mac, or you can drag and drop things because you might be more familiar with drag and drop. So I can get a list component, drop it in here. I can come in here, I say grid, drop a grid here. And the last one, I'm going to drop a chart, and which is what something I'll talk about very shortly. So let's just add a chart now. And everything is sized and resized automatically. And of course, as you know, we have support for data binding. So if I have a list component, I can basically say you need to repeat based on data. I can say you come from my employees table, give me maximum amount of records. And the layout container, in order to get a scroll, I would just say auto, and that's it. I have my layout done. I've added my components in there. And now I don't have to worry about how the resizing or the sizing works, because when I hit the preview, you will see that when I resize my canvas, everything scales beautifully, right? Except the one, which is the first one, which was a fixed layout stuff. So you don't actually see size changes, but the rest of it would actually resize fluidly. Now, the layouts are just one part of this story. We also added a lot of starter templates, just like a sample app. So anytime you create a brand new application, in this create new application dialog, we have templates for you. Again, we have added a lot of additional templates, which we have found, which basically represent your navigational structure and your navigation pattern. And you would see patterns like, oh, I want centered content, or I want something which has a fixed pane to the left and the right. I need a header on the top, and I need a footer, which is always sticky on the bottom. You know what? You don't have to guess it. Just use that template, and it's ready for you to use. And all you need to do is add data inside this template. And the views, the layout picker I talked about, they work in conjunction with the templates. So if I go into my views list, I go to this view 1, which is actually hosted inside the master layout. And you see this is, again, plain Jane stuff. So I can just remove all of this and say, you know what, I want to use a special layout. And the layout I was creating earlier, I can just reuse it. Same thing, grid. And it looks really easy that I'm adding these kind of real full-fledged components in here, but it's like it's fully powerful components which have all the components and overrides and features available to it. So you've seen Jason demo this a million times, is that grid looks nice and simple, but guess what? It comes with all the features of the grid, and you don't need to actually look at the API in order to set it up. So if I want paging on my grid, if I want grouping on my grid, column moving, hiding, all of these features are being added just at the click of a button. So I talked about copy to workspace, I talked about the layout picker, and I talked about the templates, which I can show. Now let's talk about charts. So for that, let me just go a little crazy here. Let's delete all of it again. Command A, delete, go my layout picker, and let's just pick 6 sections, why not? And now let me show you what we did in terms of charts. So with this release of App Builder, we have 2 kinds of charts shown here. One is called category chart, another one is called a pie chart. And in this category chart example, it actually contains 9 types of charts. So if I can say category chart, and it by default binds to data. And that's the other secret of this chart. It supports binding to your REST data sources. So in this case, it's selecting auto. So what we're doing is we're looking at the data which you have provided us, and we are trying to predict what is the best category chart which would actually fit your data. But I can always override it. I can say, you know what, I actually want an area chart. And that's it. It's an area chart. And you can see that this is bound to this mock data source we have created for charts called financial. And it basically has some data which is friendly for this category and numeric kind of a data source. And that's why we have provided it. But now you can just select a different data source and you can see the chart renders in real time. I can go back to my financial, say box office revenue, and let me just copy and paste these charts. And then I can go in and change all the different types of charts we have here. Go back to area, line, point. All of these charts are created directly. And now we also have pie charts, which is a favorite chart for a lot of people. So I can just say, give me a pie chart. Same thing. We have the ability to change the data source here, which I didn't show you here. So I can say edit my data fields. So if you have a very large data source which has come into the chart and you only want to plot a few of them, I can see edit data fields. In this case, we detected there were two value-friendly fields in here, the box office revenue and highest grossing movie series and franchise, which we automatically assign to category. And I can just remove it and you can see it's gone. I can add it back in my data fields picker. And this is how you would kind of quickly control how much data you're actually seeing. Then we have the ability to create palettes. This is the default palette which we have offered. And then we have one more for colorblind. But then we felt like people want more branded charts. And for that, we have added the support for a custom palette. And with this custom palette, I don't know if anybody is familiar with, there are websites out there which help you generate color safe or colorblind proof palettes for you based on a starting color or a secondary color. And you can actually go into any of those services, and all we need is you come in and just paste in those hex values, and then we would actually apply that for your chart. Now that's as convenient as it to create a branded chart. And then for the properties for the chart, we have exposed the basics which you would absolutely need for a chart. So for example, if I want a title in my chart, I can say movie franchises. And the movie franchises shows up here. For my vertical axis, I can say revenue shows up there. And I can change the interval for my vertical axis and my range for my vertical axis, right? So this is stuff. And we also have label rotation built into this chart picker. And this is the same thing for the pie chart. We actually are exposing this others category. So I can say, you know what, anything with a value less than say 20%, we roll it up into an others category. That capability is actually built into this pie chart. Of course, we have label fit options, like you can want where the label should be positioned. By default, we have this best fit option. It detects how much space it has, and then it determines where it needs to actually show up. Now, this is the capability around charts. Now, I talked about everything we have added inside of App Builder, but now we have also made two big changes related to how you get things into App Builder, most primarily data, and then how you get things out of App Builder, which is our publish to GitHub story, which has a new update this particular release. Now, let's talk about how data gets imported. So typically in this data source toolbox, I have nothing in here. I can add a new data source, and we allow you to create a REST API source. And when you come in here, you will see options to add a URL, which allows you to plug in directly to a JSON source or upload a local JSON file, which will allow you to get data out of it. But then we also introduce this open API support so that you can actually provide a Swagger endpoint for your data sources. So I can open in here. And again, it has those same two options, adding a URL or uploading a definition. So let me add a URL for you and show you the variations we have. So this is like a test URL we have been using. And you can see this ends in a swagger.yaml. I plug it in here. I hit done. And this part you might have already seen before, but I'm just showing you just for a refresher, because I wanted to show you that it does support authorization. So you can see everything in here is locked, and I want to basically get access to it because right now I can't do anything with it. Because as I select these endpoints, if I hit send, it basically says, I'm sorry, you're locked out of this thing. You actually need to provide an authorization before you can get anything from this data source. So let's just add that authorization here. So I have my authorization key. And then we actually looked at the data, the definition, and it told us that this is the security schemes it actually supports. So I can just put in an API key here, hit done, and now you see all the checks on my my endpoints, and I can now test this request again, and voila, there's a different story here. I can see what the details are, and from this point onwards, I can either go in here and provide the actual required parameters and get what I want out of it. So for example, like say coded value, it has no required parameters. I say send. I can sniff at my details, get my code name from here, go back to this one and say, let's test them with the code name I just got. I hit send, and it'll, depending on how fast that service is, it'll actually return the response for me to look at whether everything is working okay. Yep, everything works fine. But even if I don't do this, I can still go ahead and just say, you know what, get me this one. I want to use this one. I want this one. And even if I've not provided anything, if for whatever reason it gets rejected, we actually have the schema. So we'll be able to create a mock response for you. And at this point, from this point onwards, you can just go in, select the data fields you need, and you will use it in your toolbox from that point on. The improvement we made for this Swagger story or this OpenAPI story is now we also support local data sources. So I can just hit REST API, and I have a version running. So you can see it's localhost 7200, Swagger index.html, and I'm running this locally. So now I can copy this one, copy this link, go back to App Builder. Oops, here. And now instead of looking at public source, I can do a local host. Fingers crossed, everything should work. And now I can actually get stuff coming from my local host. And this is something which has been requested by customers a lot. And now we actually support this feature. And now the final thing I want to talk about is how you get stuff out of App Builder, because there are some big changes we made for that one. Let me go back into one of the apps I had here to show you. So the story for App Builder, cannot pick it. I have my test views, everything looks good. And the journey from design or designing with components inside App Builder to how a developer would get access to the code we actually provide, you could always preview it, right? So I can look inside the app preview, turn on the code view. I can see, wow, okay, this passed the sniff test, everything looks clean. I can see the TypeScript for HTML. And then of course, if you are a Blazor customer, you'll switch to Blazor and you'll see the code rendered in Blazor format. Let me go back to Angular for a moment. I hit edit. And then to get it to my development team, I would just publish it to GitHub. I have this repo called Webinar 2022, which I just created. And I have actually published this app into GitHub. Everybody knows the story, nothing fancy happening here. So let me show you what it looks like in GitHub. Everything is created in a precise way. And now if you're a developer, you can always clone this repo, and then you would have access to this exact same application. But now what I'm going to do is, in the past, we were not keeping track of changes made to the repo and the changes which were coming from App Builder. And this is something customers have asked us multiple times, like, how do I not overwrite changes in my target repo? So let's just do that. I will go into my source folder here, and imagine I have this open in Visual Studio. I go to my task HTML. And in this H6, I'm just going to edit it here and say tasks changed in code. And then I'm going to commit directly to the main branch. And now I have made changes inside my VS Code or whatever your IDE might be. And I go back to App Builder and I say tasks changed in App Builder, and say that I also changed my theme, right? I went back to dark, or I went to Fluent Sans, and I hit publish to GitHub. And it's fine. I'll just create a pull request. Takes a while. But now it's telling me that, okay, something is happening. There are some merge conflicts which have been detected between the stuff you're pushing and what's out in GitHub already. So let's just take a look at it. I'll just open it up. And now we are pretty much benefiting from everything GitHub is offering in order for you to resolve conflicts between your PR and what's there on the main branch, right? So I can say resolve my conflicts. And then GitHub has this way of showing that, okay, this is the part which was in here, and this is the part which changed, which came from App Builder. Of course, if you look at the pull request, and see what are the other files changed. Naturally, a lot more files were changed because I changed the theme, and everything is being now tracked by GitHub for us for free. And this is the work we actually did with the GitHub integration. But with this resolve conflicts, it's something which is brand new, which you will find in this release. I can now resolve the conflicts directly in here. I can say, you know what, this is the keeper, the tasks change in code. I just get rid of these markers and say, this is the keeper. And I say markers resolved, and then I can commit this merge. That's it. Merge pull request, confirm merge, and voila. I got freshest stuff, which I got from App Builder, and I retained the stuff which I already had in my repo, and nobody's going to scream at me for overwriting anything. And that is the major change we made with the GitHub integration. And this pretty much summarizes all the big moving things we actually included in App Builder in this release. We talked about the new UI kits, which were part of this App Builder project. You can get it from the Getting Started area. We talked about the samples and layouts, the sample templates, which you get access to from. Every time you create a new application, we have new templates for you to kind of choose from. We talked about the view sample templates, the view app layout templates. Anytime you're creating a brand new view, you can actually get started very quickly by using one of our pre-built layouts. I showed you the copy to workspace feature, which was brand new, and of course, charts. And this is just a starting point for charts, but now you have at least 10 types of charts into the two, including pie charts itself. And then we talked about how we now support data requests from a local source. And then finally, I showed you this whole GitHub not overwriting changes when I publish from App Builder. So that pretty much summarizes, what's fresh for this webinar for App Builder, this release. Jason?
Awesome. Thanks, George. So cool. Got a bunch of questions happening in the chat, so please keep going. I want to remind people, so we get these questions like, can I access SQL Server from App Builder? These are web apps. You can't go to SQL Server from a web app. You need to go over HTTP. This is how the web works. So you have to keep thinking in that direction. Like if you're a Windows Forms developer or a WPF developer, you have to look at your data access, change that into an API, and then you can access your SQL Server. So everything has to happen through HTTP one way or another. SQL does, I think, make this a little bit easier now. You can expose tables as endpoints. I know Postgres does that. But yeah, just keep in mind, we wouldn't, you have to do that. But what I do to make it real easy is you can use Entity Framework, and you can use the Entity Framework power tools, and they will auto-generate an API against your database. And then all of a sudden, everything's done. I've done webinars on that in the past. So if you go to the Infragistics YouTube site, you can watch any number of those that I've done and kind of see how that happens. Yeah, so George is showing there some of the code that we create the data service based on the HTTP request. So yeah, keep thinking in this direction of creating APIs, and that's how you're going to access all your data. The beauty is you can do that locally now. You have your SQL Server. You just generate web APIs for your SQL Server tables using the Entity Framework power tools. It takes literally 5 seconds, and then you decide what you want to expose through your API. So I just wanted to highlight that. Yeah, so now what we're going to do is show Angular React web components. Let's push it over to Constantine to talk about what we're doing there for this release and all the good stuff that you'll get across the board, and then what's happening in the future there as well. So Constantine, you can share your screen and unmute and take it away.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, everyone. After everything that George showed, I'm going to show some of the new stuff that we're adding to the components that power the App Builder and that power the code generation, which is enabled through the App Builder. Now, if I can, oh yeah, I can move this here. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to remind everyone that the web components that we ship, the Angular components that we ship, Those are all open source. They are available on GitHub, and pretty much everyone can go and see at any point in time where are we at with our current feature development, what have we already released, what are we currently working on. By the way, there is a detailed changelog that we have in each of our repositories, which shows all of the work that we've done version by version. There is also a release list, a releases list with very detailed changelog. You can even see, the type of PRs that made it into each release. We also tried to make our READMEs a little bit more presentable so that they look better. But for anything at any time, please go to our GitHub repositories, click the star here. We appreciate your stars. Same applies to our web components repository. But let me jump into some demos now. So what did we add in the releases since 21.2? So one of the larger improvements that we did is to the tree grid filtering functionality. So tree grid, as you know, displays homogeneous hierarchical data. So what does that mean? That the schema of each record is the same, but the records actually have a hierarchy one on top of another. So one of the things that we didn't have so far is when you open the filtering, you see an Excel style filter, you see all the unique values, right? But the filter does not really display the type of hierarchy that you receive on top of these unique values. And now for the unit price category, the hierarchy actually doesn't make sense because we're looking for unique prices here. But if we're looking at the leading column, which is actually the column that displays the hierarchy, we need to be able to somehow visualize and filter by the hierarchy itself. And so we've enabled that in one of the latest feature updates. As you can see, the Excel style filter in this column is actually displayed with a tree. And so what I can do now is I'm not simply looking at all of the unique values available regardless of where in the hierarchy. I'm looking at all of the unique values in hierarchical fashion. And so what I can do from this view is I can say, well, give me everything that is foods now, all right? And I'm left with only items that are under foods. I can even be more specific. So I'll say, give me everything that is foods and give me only Chang from beverages, all right? And I again see the hierarchy. You see how this is grayed out? It means there is more values here, but they're currently filtered out. And so we're showing just a subset. So it might seem like a small improvement, but it actually is very significant to the end user experience when the tree grid is used, because this is a very common scenario. If let's say we're looking at an org chart, you probably want to see not only a manager, but everyone that is under that manager. And if it's like, a deeper hierarchy, then everyone that's under those people and so on and so forth. So next one that I'm going to show is we did a small improvement to our tabs. Now, over time, it's very important for all of our products to not only look nice, to not only function nice, but to also be compliant. So we're very thorough about accessibility. We're very thorough about internationalization. We actually ship a ton of localizations for our built-in component strings with the product. I think currently there are 22 out of the box. 22 different languages that we ship for the strings that we have. But that also applies to right to left support, right? Because, we may be used to looking at the UI from the perspective of this corner to this corner, which is left to right. But some parts of the world, right to left is how it is being viewed. And so tabs was one of the components that wasn't really working nicely with the right to left support. And we've updated that with the latest release. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add an attribute to the body of this document. So I'm going to say direction is RTL, right? And tabs move to the other side, all right? So I need to run change detection cycle because I manipulated the DOM itself in order for the highlight to also move. But tabs are now displayed in the opposite direction. And as you can see, prefixes moved on the right side, suffixes moved to the left side. So everything is now compliant. The tabs are actually moving now in the opposite direction of what they were moving previously. Right? Small improvement, but still it is significant, because if you want to have full right to left support on your application, you need to have all of the components also support that. Now, the crown jewel of the release of 2022.1 is actually the pivot grid component. So I'm going to point you to Medium. We have a section on Medium called Ignite-UI. We post a lot of different blogs on about components, about App Builder, about general best practices when developing on the web, when developing without, on other technologies. But there's this post that I wrote about the pivot grid, like what is a pivot grid, what is it used for? That was the grid that was missing from our grid offering. So we had all the other ones. We had master detail, we had flat grid, we had tree grid, hierarchical grid, but we were missing a pivot. So what's a pivot? Well, a pivot allows you as a user to visualize data that may be flat, it may not, but to create dimensions and aggregations on top of this data in order to slice and dice it to views that you want to see, like that makes sense for your use case. So what we have here is, in this pivot, we've visualized profit that we've done by country and then by product for different periods. So we have data, and this is mock data, of course, but we have data for 2019, 2020, 2021, 2018 in this example. And we visualize profits for each product by country in this grid. Now, all right, so I can see that Vermont is doing better than Kensington in the UK, but how are they doing in Japan? So let me scroll to the right. This is probably not the best view that I'm looking at, but so Kensington in Japan is actually doing much worse than Vermont. All right, but okay, I can actually view this in a different way. So let's say we want to see products and then country. All right, now I see Vermont product and then split it up by each of the countries that we have sales on. So okay, so actually USA is India is doing best on this product, and then is USA, and UK is doing really bad. But how are we doing on the other products? Well, maybe the story is slightly different there. Yep, it is. So in Kensington, if we look at this, then India and Brazil are doing best here, and USA is actually lacking behind. So this is the type of interaction that you can do with a pivot. It's actually much more powerful than this. Let's add another aggregation. So we're currently looking at only profits, but I want to see total sales, not just profits. So we can see that in UK, we actually did a lot of sales for Vermont, but the profit is not that much. Then in Japan, we did slightly more sales, but almost twice as much profit. So probably Japan is doing better on the part of how much they spent, what is the cost to actually make a sale. All right. So this is the type of things that we can look at with a pivot grid. And again, this is the same data. I haven't changed the underlying data. I'm just changing what is being displayed. All right. And there's also more things that you can do. We want to see only Brazil. How are they doing? Okay. And so we see products only in Brazil. What are the sales? What are the profits for each of the products? And the same is applied to the other dimension. We can add more stuff to the road dimension. So let's move country here. All right. So now we're actually filtered only by Brazil, right? So let me remove that filter. Okay. Now we see by period, like 2019, and my country is actually displayed as a row. So this is really the the most advanced grid component that you can ever use. You may have used this in Excel. That's where most people face the pivot grid for the first time. But we offer it as a component. You can feed it data, and our component is going to display it. You don't have to do, you know, a whole lot of work as a developer. You need to define some aggregations on your data, meaning provide some functions, but that's it. Then the UI comes automatically out of it. And the pivot data selector is the same case. So in the blog, I showed that, you know, the same pivot is actually aggregated on top of this type of records. As you will see, the record is entirely flat. So the display has nothing to do with what exactly we fed it, but it's much, much better in terms of the information that we receive from it. Okay. Another small improvement that we did, we have this row dragging feature. There was a lot of requests for from different users for scrolling in this grid whenever you drag to the edges of the grid, so that, you know, you can reorder at different levels of the grid. And we implemented that. Another small improvement we did to the Angular grid is sorting. So sorting was actually coming out of the box as a multi-sort capability. All right, now we've exposed a single sort option. Why? It was achievable previously, but it has a slightly different UX. So when you do multi-sort, we have these indicators which show which column was sorted first, which was sorted second, because this is informative to the end user, especially in the scenarios where the developer specifies the pre-sorting conditions, and then the end user consumes the already sorted data. But if it's sorted by multiple dimensions, you have no idea which got sorted first, right? But with single sort, we don't need that, right? Because there is only one column that is sorted at a time. So we just show the direction of which the current sorted column is sorted, and with the different color of the indicator. Another improvement that we did to this is our grouping and our sorting was connected. So it was basically reusing the same collection behind the scenes. And so grouping and sorting were affecting each other in a way where if I have a descending sort on the company name and I group by ship country, when I group, my sorting used to be lost. Also, when I ungroup, the sorting would also reset. Now, when we're keeping them separately, they don't reset each other. The only thing that you will get a reset on is if you sort and group by the same column. Then if you remove that sorting or grouping, both actions will be, unperformed. Let's call it this way. Actually, no. If you unsort, the grouping will not be removed, but if you ungroup, the sorting will be removed. So those were the bigger features that we shipped with Angular. As I said, you can get a complete change log if you go to our blog, or if you go to the GitHub repository. Again, please give us a star. But the other major improvements that we did with this release is to our web components library. So web components are pure native web components that we ship. We build them with lit, and those are for native HTML, CSS, JavaScript applications, no framework. So you have zero dependency on this. There isn't the Angular framework. There isn't a React library underneath. It's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, these components, as Jason said, they are no different than the Angular ones. Why? Because we follow a strict design system policy. So we define components in our design system, and then we implement them in different technologies. Actually, these web components also power our Blazor product. They also power our React product. So you get a toast in web components. You're going to get the same toast in Blazor, looking the same way, acting the same way, behaving the same way. They are no different from each other. You have the same user experience. So if I go back to Angular, let's go to the toast. I clicked the header. So let's go to the toast. Immediately you're going to notice they look different, right? Well, they don't. So natively, we display our Bootstrap theming by default in the web components world. By default, we display our material light theme in the Angular world. But if I change this to Bootstrap, And if I spawn the toast again, voila, it's the same, right? And the same is actually applicable to the web components. If I change the theming here to material, then the toast is going to look exactly the same way that it looks in the Angular product. We still haven't exposed the theming selector here in the web components, but we will very soon. So you will be able to do the same thing that I just did with the Angular sample. So we added a lot of new components. Toast is one, snack bar is another. So the difference between toast and snack bar is snack bar actually has an action button. And you can perform actions on top of the message that is being displayed. We added a slider. The slider is exactly the same as what we have in Angular. So we have a single value slider. So behaving and acting as an input type range. We also have a 2-value slider where you can configure lower and upper values from the same component. And this is useful where for scenarios where, let's say, you create filters for a shop, for an online store, and you want to specify price range for products to be filtered by. This slider is, as I said, is the same as what we have in Angular. You can do data binding between the slider and a different component. You can also display things like a track. Here's a track. I don't know how visible the track is actually in the screen share because I see it well, but maybe it doesn't come through that well. We also have tick marks that you can configure, and this one has more tick marks. And the API is the same as what we have in Angular. Let me see if there is anything else out. The restyling is very, very much the same as what we have in Angular. Another thing that we added is linear and circular progress bars. So linear progress bar, same thing that you would expect, the same thing that we have in Angular. There is also an indeterminate state that you can use as a loading indicator. Circular progress, similar thing. Again, you have an indeterminate state that you can use as a progress indicator. It has nice animations. You can define gradients on it for different colors of the progress. What are the chip component? The chip component, again, the same thing that you can expect if you already use our Angular product. So it's the same thing that you can expect from there. Has different states, can be selectable, can define different slots on it. So suffix, prefix, has disabled state, different size models, restyling again. Another larger component that we added is drop down with different positioning settings. So, the usual menu that you can expect. Here we have a sample that shows how you can configure it to show in different places related to the target. And let me see. So other ones that we added are the tree in the expansion panel. I actually had a problem with our samples right before the example. Let me see if the deployment went through. No, it didn't. Just check this. Oh, it did. Maybe I just have to clear the cache. I don't know. Okay, the expansion indicator is not shown because the import was incorrect, but there is an expansion indicator here on the expand panel. This is gonna be fixed in 15 or so minutes, but yeah, we have the same expansion panel that we have in Angular. We also moved it over to web components, so it's available in Blazor and in React. And the same applies to a tree component. Oh, by the way, I'm not even in production. I'm on staging. Maybe that's why the expansion indicator is not shown. Nah, okay, sorry about that. All right, tree has the same problem. It has the same import issue where the expansion indicator is not shown, but basically it looks like this. Right. Okay. And those are most of the major components that I wanted to show. So Jason, you're going to do the Blazor ones?
Yes. So thank you for that. Got some more questions here. Folks are asking about pivot grid and paging. Edwin, maybe specify what you're looking for. Pivot grids, it's a unique grid. It's not a tabular grid. It's not a hierarchical grid. It's a pivot grid like Excel. So there's no such thing as paging because you are pivoting data to do summaries, and those summaries are aggregates. So there is no such thing as paging in a pivot grid unless you're looking for some sort of a paging experience in a flat grid. But let us know, because these things, the devil's always in the details, and we don't necessarily understand what your specific scenario is. So the Sean is also asking about a multi-combo and IGB combo. I'll share my screen here, Constantine.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, awesome demo. Thank you so much. So screen one, share. Yep, those are two different controls, actually. So nothing's been changed. The IGB combo we just, or drop down, we actually just pushed out this week. That's brand new. So, all right. So you can see my Blazor screen, Constantine. Is that what I'm showing?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Our website.
Yep, that's what I see.
All right, I'm confused. I can't see what I'm sharing. I'm just hoping it's the right screen. So anyway, Blazor, and we're going to wrap this up quick. I know we're kind of already at the noon timeline, but basically what Constantine said is everything that we're doing now is based on the design system. So when you have something in Angular, that's the same thing you're going to get in web components, in React, and in Blazor. And our goal is by Q3 of this year, or in Q3 of this year, that there's 100% parity across all of these platforms. So if you go to the Ignite UI for Blazor homepage today, just go to our main website, go to Blazor, you can see all the new controls that we've shipped in this release. And some of these were in the last release, but all the big stuff we kind of already had. Now it's fleshing out more and more of these controls, like buttons, inputs, calendar controls, ripples, all the things that you need to actually make applications. So Constantine, I think earlier was showing the snack bar component, and it's the same thing that you saw in Angular. It's the same thing you saw in web component. And so I'm not going to go through every single example here. A couple things I will highlight is on the grid. One of the bigger features that folks asked for was a pager. We had a paging, you could do paging in the grid before, but the grid is actually virtualized by default. So it accepts unlimited rows and columns. So we just had the scroll bar, and you could do load on demand. Now with the pager, you can go and ask for pages. It comes back, and it's actually quite nice. And then the other thing that was a big feature request was around the doc manager. So the doc manager prior to this release was basically a web component. And then we had an example that showed you how to use it in a Blazor app. But now we actually have a real live API around the doc manager. So you can reference IGB content panes. You can reference split panes. You can actually interact with the components, with the individual panes. So it's marked as beta now. The only reason is because it's a very complex control. There's a lot of things that go into all of this stuff that happens on the web. We're just doing more testing, and it's available. You can use it, and it'll be released probably within the next couple sprints. It'll be a fully released product or control. One thing though in this control that is really useful is we have this sample called using panes. And a lot of the questions I get in email and we get in support is around doing like master detail scenarios with Blazor. We've done a bunch of webinars on that. So if you want to go watch any of them, go check out our YouTube page. But this example is a great example of using different controls, not only in the doc manager, but showing how master detail works. So how to get like the value of something in a grid or a list, and how to pass that value to the map control or the tree control to then go query data to bring that back in. So as you're learning Blazor, just like when you learn Windows Forms or WPF, these are the most common scenarios that you run into. So I would take a look at this particular sample, and you can see how eventing works, and how you can pass variables between components. and things like that. And of course, everything except the doc manager, that's not supported in App Builder yet, but all of the controls that are in the toolbox now are supported in App Builder. So any app that you build, and when you generate code and you pick Blazor, you're going to get Blazor generated code or Angular generated code. So you don't have to worry about what framework you're actually using. The other thing that I wanted to highlight for everyone is on our web page or our website, if you go to Learn and Support and you go to Reference Applications, we have this selector which shows all of the different sample apps that we have per platform. Some have more than others. But if you go to App Builder, any one of these samples here, like I just had the e-commerce auto shop open, what we're doing with these samples is we are giving you the sketch or the XD file, which shows how the app was actually designed. The App Builder, you can open this guy up in App Builder, you can download the code. So for example, this auto shop app, this is the XD file for the auto shop app using the UI kit. So if you're wondering what is all this stuff about UI kits and what are they doing, this is a design tool, XD, and designers are literally just dragging and dropping components from a toolbox to create their screens, just like you would in App Builder or Visual Studio. So we've put these out there for all of our samples using our UI kits, because the whole point of this is that the design system is dictating the rules of the components of the UI kits, and everything flows from design to code through all of our products. So when you look at something in Blazor or React or Web Components or Angular, they all live by the rules of the design system. The design system can be used by designers and their tool of choice, or developers in App Builder or through our components. And so it really just brings together how you're building software today in your small business or in your enterprise or in your department, because everyone's using different tools. What we're doing is bringing these things together so it makes it easy for you. So for example, this guy here, I could easily go to plugins and I could say, you know, create new app with this right from Adobe XD. Or if I just want to tool around with it right now, I can say, open this auto shop app in App Builder, and it's actually generating this code in real time from the UI kit, which the sample app was built with Adobe XD. The beauty is these are all components now. These are all things that are in the toolbox of App Builder. And then even better, if I'm a Blazor developer, I can say, here's Blazor. Let me download this zip file. I can download the zip, and I have this entire, all of the screen design, everything that's here is now in a Blazor app with real Blazor components from the Ignite UI Blazor UI controls. So that's how all of this stuff ties together. So I want to wrap it up there because we're already over time. If you're looking at Blazor, go check out all the samples. If you're looking at web components, run through all the samples. Constantine kind of highlighted everything that is in the control sets for 22.1, because everything that was in Angular is now in web components, is now in Blazor. So it's all the same stuff. The only difference is the code. So go ahead and download this now. Log into your customer portal at infragistics.com. Check out the blogs. In the chat, I actually pasted blogs. So hopefully everyone saw that and can click on that blog here. You know, you can get links to the other blogs. So there's like a detailed blog on web components. There's a detailed blog on Blazor. There's detailed blogs all over the place for all this stuff. So check out the blog that I pasted in there. And then, and that's it. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Have a great week. Download 22.1 today, and we will see you at the next webinars. Thank you, and look out for the follow-up emails tomorrow. I'll see you guys. Bye-bye.